Further debate. I recognize the member from Kingston in the Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When this bill was first introduced, I had the honor and pleasure to speak at Queen's University in Associate Professor Shelley Arnott's class on aquatic invertebrates and ecosystems. Shelley's area of specialty is the invasive species spiny water flea, which reduces crustacean diversity, which impacts fish growth. And I have to say that I agree with the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs 100% when he speaks of this being the time when the House is at its best, when we can all agree on the material that we have before us, the legislation we have before us. Invasive species typically adapt and easily produce. This is the nature of the problem that we're dealing with. They tend to compete with native species of animals and plants for food and or habitat, and in doing so interrupt the ecological balance. They can cause physical damage to property and they can affect local economies. Now, I have to backtrack here a minute and say that I'm sharing my time with the member of Barrie, the Minister of Citizenship, Immigration and International Trade, and the member from Brampton, Springdale. My apologies. To get back to the matter at hand. Invasive species can be introduced accidentally, as has already been mentioned, or on occasion purposely introduced for pest control. One example is escaped pets, such as Burmese pythons in the Florida Everglades, which now threaten local bird species. Closer to home, the Asian carp is an imminent threat to the Great Lakes, and introduced as a food species in the southern U.S., they now have infested the entire Mississippi basin. Being voracious eaters of plankton, the basis of the aquatic food chain, they pose a considerable threat to our fisheries, which is a $2.2 billion industry in Ontario. Asian carp eats 120% of their body weight each day. It has been estimated that just 10 males and 10 females would be enough to gain a foothold. Invasive species already cost the Ontario economy tens of millions of dollars each year, putting resource-based jobs in fisheries, forestry, and agriculture, and in tourism at risk. The total cost to Ontario for invasive species prevention, management, mitigation, and associated research is unknown. There are several figures, however, that are available that illustrate the considerable economic impacts. Zebra mussels, as has already been stated, costs Ontario up to $91 million a year. The City of Toronto estimates that it has spent at least $37 million over the last 5 years to replace city-owned trees killed by emerald ash borer. Mountain pine beetle in Western Canada has cost billions in lost revenue. In the Kingston area, there have been growing reports that zebra mussels, round goby, and garlic mustard are a growing problem. Round goby is an aggressive predator of fish eggs, contributing to the decline of many valuable sport fish populations. Garlic mustard, an aggressive invader of wooded areas, has become very prominent in Kingston, shading out native flora and inhibiting seed germination of other species. The serious threat of invasive species must be addressed. The preceding legislation is a patchwork of more than 20 federal and provincial acts, none of which are designed to deal with invasive species specifically. On November 5th, the Minister for Natural Resources and Forestry reintroduced the Invasive Species Act to help address these legislative gaps. If passed, the legislation would provide a strong legislative framework to better prevent, detect, rapidly respond to, and eradicate invasive species. The Act would give Ontario the tools to ban activities such as possessing and transporting certain invasive species. It would allow the government to intervene earlier and enable rapid response actions to address urgent threats, including working with partners to stop an invasive species from spreading, for example, by preventing the movement of contaminated firewood. It would also help promote compliance through inspection and enforcement measures. Managing invasive species has always been a collaborative effort with all levels of government, industry, environmental groups, and the public. If passed, the Act would also work to expand on the use of strategic partnerships to tackle this issue collectively. Merci beaucoup.